Parker.
And my name is Ned.
And my name is Ben.
And this is the Force Unlimited, yet another Star Wars Unlimited podcast. This is episode number 36, and we are recording with special guest Ben from Unlimited Limited. Welcome, Ben.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm looking forward to talking about Star Wars Unlimited.
In the limited context?
In the limited, limited, unlimited. I was having a hard time figuring out which order those words should go in when I made my channel, but yeah.
Well, as the one of the other content creators with who actually went forward and put unlimited in the name, we obviously had to have you on. Actually, Ben posted some math on Blue Sky, and when I saw it, much like Tag Team, I was like, "Whoop, there it is!" And I tagged Ned and said, "Ned, let's have Ben on the show." And then, just like in all aspects of our life, Ned handled the logistics from there. So.
Hell yeah, brother. I got this little... I can't do the bit, but just imagine me as like Macho Man Randy Savage getting tagged into the Blue Sky conversation.
Yeah. As in all things, I am the idea man, and Ned is the actual execution. Ben, hype your channel.
So I run a channel called Unlimited Limited. I am... just decided that I wanted to make a channel focused on the draft and sealed and, of course, pre-release formats for Star Wars Unlimited. So I talk about, at the beginning of every new set, I talk about card evaluations and what I think of each card going into the set. And then I'm wrong about a bunch of them because I haven't played with them yet because it's before they've come out. And then I go in and talk about what I was wrong about, and I learned some things, and hopefully you'll learn some things too. And every now and then I do some stats too, but I'm... if you're watching this show, you probably already know more about stats than I do, so you can come and correct me in the comments.
Not true. No.
Well, there's like 5% of our audience that is very true. And
Sure.
95% of our show is here for Ned's personality. What is your favorite?
Ooh boy,
card,
Parker,
Ben?
that's.
What's your favorite card, Ben?
My favorite card in the entire game is a leader. It is Chirrut Imwe, One with the Force from Spark of Rebellion. It's the card the leader I've been running since about a week after launch up until last week at a store showdown when I decided that unfortunately I just can't keep up with it. I'm going to locals. I'm regularly getting 2-2 or 3-1 with it, but at a store showdown the stakes are a little higher. I should probably play a real deck.
Well, the good news is we've got new Chirrut coming, and you can now just include him in a much wider variety of decks, and still, to the extent that whether he's your favorite because you like the Ip Man or whether he's your favorite because you like the mechanic. Ned is too shy to ask, so I will ask Ben, what is your favorite fast food?
My favorite fast food, so I'm Canadian, and this has almost nothing to do with it, but I visited America for a week, like a year ago. I went down to Ohio, and on the way, stopped and had, what's it called? They make burritos.
Taco Bell?
No.
Taco Bell?
Chipotle.
You say Chipotle.
Yes, and it's the first time I'd ever had that. I was like, whoa, this is actually really good. This is good fast food. So there you go.
Not joking. Ned is a Chipotle VIP.
I am.
Incredible.
I saved up enough points to get the So for a while they had a merchandise cash-in where if you had enough points, you could cash it in and get like apparel. Mm-hmm. So I have the official Chipotle shirt that is very understated. It's like a white long sleeve shirt, but it has I'm a little extra as like a little tag in the
Perfect.
sort of hidden on the shirt. So
Ned and I used to work blocks from each other, and there was a Chipotle on the same street as that works. Yeah. And so we met there often for lunch, and as often happens early in a friendship, Ned mistook that as my interest in Chipotle and not him. And so now he keeps asking me about if I've tried the new meat at Chipotle, and I have not been. I've not been back since Ned stopped working where he worked down the street from me because why? So anyway, we have Ben on. We're going to talk tonight. We're going to assess. We're going to talk about card assessment. We're going to talk about the match they played. But first, I want to draw attention to the this weekend is Memorial weekend, so happy 3-day weekend. Thank you, those who served. It's also Minneapolis weekend, and Ned and I are putting out probably one of the only shows this week that will not really dive into the results out of Minneapolis. So if you are tired of hearing about Minneapolis, welcome to possibly one of the only swoosh shows not on it. But I actually do want to talk about it. We don't normally talk about the meta, but if you're on YouTube, we have a little graphic here. Thank you to Late Night Gaming for letting us borrow their graphic.
It's very
and if
nice.
you want to actually hear a breakdown of the top 8 at Minneapolis, I guarantee you Late Night Gaming will have some master classes on it. But the top 8, for those of you driving in your car, we've got Woo Took It Down. Ned, did you play Woo when we were on Late Night?
I think I did for the title of Grandest Inquisitor. I think
he was on the Rex.
Oh,
he was there with the goofy Rex
I played
deck.
That. Yeah.
So I can now say I've played somebody who took down a regional. Woo in first place. We had Quinlan red in second. We had Cad Bane red in third. We had Han 2 in blue for fourth. We had Han 1 in green for fifth. We had Sabine at sixth in green. We had Ray Datavault in seventh, and then we had another Quinlan in red at eighth. And I think there's something to be said for this diversity. This is 7 leaders in the top 8. That's fantastic. Playing a variety of color. All the colors are represented. That's also great. But I want to note, if you want to hear about why that's great in the mechanical breakdown, this is, I think, any game designer is going to be happy with a meta like this. This feels diverse. This feels robust. That's great. Yay.
You have aggro, you have mid-range, you have control,
the archetypes are all represented.
Yeah.
The sets are mostly represented. We have 3 sets present. No JTL, which little, but at least if you're going to have a set be absent, the most recent one tells us that they're not card creeping. I want to draw attention to something that I don't think gets acknowledged enough, which is this. This is a fantastic lore, diversity of lore. We have 3 different women, which is great. We have characters from all eras. Like, Cad Bane technically wasn't in the prequel movies, but then he was retroactively added in the Clone Wars movie that came out. The first 3 episodes of the Clone War TV show. He was behind the scenes. So we've got prequel era, we've got original trilogy era, we've got sequel era, we've got people from the less appreciated movies, we got people from the cartoons, different cartoons, and we've even got nobody cares about Quinlan's 1 episode of Clone Wars or whatever. He's absolutely a book and comic book character. So it's making a mechanically complex game is hard. Truth granted, but in one of the early interviews about Star Wars Unlimited before it came out, Tyler was talking about one of the problems with Destiny is that there wasn't enough Star Wars in it. It was always fights between Cloud City guards versus some background Jedi during the Petronaki Arena's fight scene where all the it didn't feel like Star Wars. This is such a amazing sampling of Star Wars characters, and I just think that boggled my mind. Not only is it great mechanically, which A+ is also just, this feels like a real sampling of Star Wars, and I think that just merits acknowledgement. I am crazy impressed with this.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't speak much to the lore, but I am impressed. The one thing that I will note is that using the showcase image for Kira had me confused, because as a cheap human being, I have never seen the Kira showcase in my life.
that is fair. You were like, who is that? I was like, that's having never seen it before. Yeah. That is fair. So we're going to talk about, as we always do, the match that we played. But I say we. I actually didn't get to play a match. We set up a sealed match between Ben and Ned, and they played a sealed match. So, Ben, why don't you tell me about the match you two just played?
Yeah, I would love to, but don't you guys usually start off with Mr. Suitcase?
Yes!
Oh, gosh, dang it!
We do. And dear listener, if you're wondering what cards you're seeing, so are the people on YouTube. I am terrible at this, but that was great. Thank you, Ben. Thank you for helping with that. We've got Phasma. So, nice. Ben, if you're not paying attention,
I'm paying attention.
This is a new bit for us. Ned objects, I think, generally with people spending extravagant amounts of wealth on card games.
Yeah.
And so
I love card games. I don't love spending money. Yeah.
Neither of us should pay shinies. So I bought a Carbonite booster just so that I could open a pack at the start of every episode. I was thinking about it, Ned, when I was taking a walk the other day. Let's see what our
Ooh, all right.
It's a good draft card. I like it.
Yeah.
It's a rock solid, and those the prestiges are gorgeous. I can't wait to see them in Legends of the Force. You had this. I don't want to spoil it. You had this in your opening hand the entire match. You held on to this card bed during your...
I wanted to play it. It was just always the second best choice.
Yes.
Nothing to write home about. Oh, wait, there was one more. There was also a big Dark
It's a good card.
Dark Later. Just a lot of hyperspace. But, Ned, I was thinking about it. Those Carbonite packs are... It's so funny. You and I in middle school standing there both without enough money to buy the fancy cards, and we went 2 different paths, right? like Robert Frost, there were 2 paths. You said, I'm never spending money, and one day I said, I'll have enough money to waste it on a card game. And so here we are where the echoes of that feeling echo forth for you 30 years later to not want, like the existence of a Carbonite pack being opened by your friend makes you angry, and I will throw away money on a Carbonite pack only to make my friend angry. So,
I wish I could open up the expensive cards. I really do. Maybe one day, but I'm a grad student right now, so I'm sort of being forced to be good with money.
Oh, no.
Not my own choice. I would be ripping packs if I could, trust me.
See, neither Ned or I are shiny chasers. We're both aggressive singles purchasers. I buy more boxes than Ned because I'm lazy and I don't want to wait. I want my diversity of decks on day one. But both of us are not into that game, but I will absolutely spend that kind of money to antagonize them.
A good use of money, probably.
Grad school was a long time ago. But let's go into... So, Ben, but seriously, you and Ned built a sealed deck over the weekend.
Yes.
40-minute time constraint, 6 packs. Fortunately, no pre-release leaders. Tell me about the match you just played.
Yeah, sure. So I was playing the Poe Dameron from Jump to Lightspeed with the green base, and Ned was playing Luke with the green base. So it was Heroism, Aggression, Command versus Heroism, Aggression, Command, which I have noticed pretty often. We'll maybe talk about that later a little bit, but that green-red tends to be like pretty strong this set in draft. But so we played a best of 3. And I'll just sort of I'll bury the lead here. Big spoiler: Ned won 2-0. It wasn't even close. So
I think it was. I think you almost stable. And I think in the second game you were pretty close to stabilizing.
Well, you're very kind. Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah.
So the reason why I built my deck the way I did, which is the Poe green and not something else, was I actually had 2 copies of the Radis, which is a draft bomb for sure. That's the 7-cost 8/6 that has a Sentinel, or that is Sentinel when you have a resistance card, which of course I had Poe as my leader, so I always would. And then when defeated, you deal damage equal to this unit's power, so often 8, but sometimes more if you have a pilot on it, to an enemy unit. So the card is great because it can almost always at least 2 for 1, and usually more than that, and then completely stabilize you in space against the slightly more aggressive decks. If they let you get to 7, which in draft is pretty often that you're able to get to 7. And oftentimes I find that decks don't usually go on the ground as well, so having a big Sentinel in space is good enough oftentimes. So that's why I chose Poe as my leader. And I got it down in one of our games, I think, and it almost stabilized me, but not quite. I needed to draw the second one.
Yeah, I definitely thought you had been purely from a place of naivete. I'm absolutely like pure Timmy, so I was just like, oh, look at all these bombs that you're opening, and I mean, you had like 4 legendaries. You had Han in your pack. You had the planetary bombardment, and I was just like, oh man, Ben's got Ned. Your luck historically in limited is
not as good as some other people's.
Not as good as some other people's. And so I was like, oh, Ben's gonna have this on lock, and then oh no, it turns out like low grade consistent poopers.
Yeah. And Luke is just a very, very strong leader. The fact that he flips it on 6, which can sometimes be a little bit of a liability. I've lost games to that for sure. But when you get him down, if your opponent can't immediately win, you have just, especially if you get him on a fighter, of course, like every attack is now a 2-for-1, and it probably takes 2 or 3 attacks in order to actually get rid of Luke. And by then, the value you've gotten off him is just absolutely insane for sure. And yes, I did get some legendaries. Devastator and Executor were there, but I really wanted to do Executor. It would have been really funny, but unfortunately 11 cost cards in draft are often prohibited.
I mean, again, it just goes to show, like, I'm not great at it. I see the shiny, and I immediately like, yep, I'm making this work no matter what, which is why every 2 weeks I get together with Ned and I spin my sad tales and ask for advice on cold-blooded analysis, because
if you like the sort of Timmy drafts, I strongly recommend a Carbonite draft. I did one of those a couple weeks ago, and I had 2 copies of the Starhawk, and then I played a double off aspect Annihilator, and because it was half costed, it was 15, but it was actually only, I think it was 8 or 7. I don't remember if it's round up or round down. I think it's round up, so it would have been 8. And I ended up 3-0ing in that draft just because of the absolute ridiculousness of having this crazy double off aspect thing that no one would ever expect, and because why would I ever do that? And but yeah, definitely my favorite Timmy draft of all time is a Carbonite draft for sure.
I hadn't considered doing one of those. Now I want to do one of those, and a unique draft experience might tear Ned in half. I think I could get Ned to go do that and just watch him rip right down the middle, torn two ways, right? Like,
it's great because you can kind of throw out some of the draft fundamentals. You were saying a minute ago, right, about how it's important to just have like 2 cost beaters or whatever, and that is true, but because there's like fewer commons and uncommons, which is usually where those 2 cost beaters are, you can get away with doing a lot of ridiculous stuff. So because there's going to be less removal, because that's often at common and uncommon. There's going to be less 2-cost aggro piles. So you're going to be at least mid-range most of the time, and it's just silly, and I highly recommend it.
Ned, if you can round up 6 people, you won't have to go through this segment ever again.
I will see what I can do. That's tipping the scales in a particular direction.
Fly me down, I'll do it.
that is a steep ask, but I bet we have some goodwill. Maybe not after our most recent preview video, but we have some goodwill left in Portland. Let's talk about our primary segment for the night. So, as I understand it, and again. I just like pitch an idea to Ned, and so I don't know exactly how much we're going to talk about, what kind of card analysis. Ned and I have actually done an episode about card analysis, but I thought the idea of doing one again now would be great. One, because I don't think we just did it more just analysis in general, not from the limited focus, which I think is powerful. But more importantly, I think this, like, leaning into that skill of analysis as opposed to just relying on lists is really critical in moments like now, where, as we always say, Ned math is descriptive, unlike Danny math, which is prescriptive. But the Danny math is changing, right? Like Fantasy Flight's definition of what a card is costed is fundamentally shifting, and so, like, again, in the same way that like a Carbonite draft might throw off some of your fundamentals, like how much can you get for 2? How much can you get for 3? I think is being fundamentally upset with Legends of the Force.
Yes.
So going through some of the and we don't, Ned and I try to avoid previews, but I think seeing cards we're not familiar with and talking through them is a, because again, unless, even if you're like really high on your own supply. Like even if you're really like doing this every day, your pre-release is the first time you're touching these cards.
Yes.
And like
and
in the moment
matters a huge amount, right? Like I think the classic example is how good is a 3-2 versus a 2-3 versus a 2-2, and it really depends on what the balance of like 3-2s versus 2-3s versus 2-2s are. Like, can you get a 2-2? If there's a lot of 2-2s, then 3-2s lose their value because your 2-2s can trade into them, particularly if it's like a 2-2 with a rider. Whereas like 2-3s trade very, very favorably into 2-2s, so your 2-2s with a bonus go way down, but if the format is more aggressively slanted, and in particular if you can lane dodge, then like a 3-2 in an unusual environment can be worth quite a bit. And not to go too deep into the weeds here initially, but I do want to start off by going over some very, very fundamentals because it was a while ago, and that's the idea of quadrant theory. So quadrant theory is maybe not as useful as it once was, but is fundamentally a way of looking at cards where when you're looking at a card, you want to ask yourself, is it good early? Is it good when you're ahead? Is it good when you're behind? And is it good at parity? Those are kind of the 4 quadrants. And somebody else had a more descriptive version of that, Ben, if you remember. There was something that was a little bit better, but the basic idea is that when you're looking at a card, you want to ask yourself, if I draw this on the early turns of the game, how do I feel about it? If I draw this and it's the middle to late turns of the game and I'm behind, how do I feel about this? If I draw this on the later mid turns of the game and I'm ahead, how do I feel about this? And this is particularly relevant for, can this card, if I draw it, immediately win me the game? And then at parity, is this the kind of card that can take a situation in which we've both developed our boards and we're approximately equal, and can we break that tempo? Can we break that parity? So I think the cards that you were talking about, Radix, where it's a 2-for-1 on a big sentinel body, is a classic example of cards that are good both at parity and when you're behind.
Absolutely.
Right? Where when you're at parity, you can arrange trades where you can trade it for at least 2 of your opponent's units and you can get ahead. Like you've traded 1 of your cards for 2 of their cards. And because you get to control how the damage is dealt, frequently that can mean that you're trading for more resource value of cards than your opponent has, and you can set things up very, very well. And then when you're behind, the fact that it is a sentinel that also deals damage when defeated means that as long as your opponent is primarily attacking you in the space lane, you have an ability to have a chance to come back, right? Because you can trade for whatever your opponent's going to attack into it with, and then another one of their big threats. And in the context of JTL, where most of the aggression is happening in the space lane, that's huge. But if you were to look at that card in, say, like a Spark or a Shadows kind of an environment, a lot of times having a big sentinel body with a when defeated ability in space, you're just not going to realize the value from that. And so that's what we mean by like cards are contextual. So in this segment, Ben and I have both picked out a set of cards from the Legend of the Force, and we're going to talk about them from a like clean slate perspective. And I think that one of the main things that it's important to focus on.
What do you mean by clean slate?
We don't know anything about the format, right? Like there are some guesses, right? Like Force is probably a keyword that is well supported. So like having Force, like what is the value of your Force token? Right.
Yeah. And we've seen like less than half of the main deckable cards at this point. So, we've seen about, I think, around 118 of the 264 cards. So that's less than half. Mm-hmm. And then when you factor out that they've been very aggressive about showing us bases and leaders, like even, so yeah, we have obviously the Force is a thing.
Yeah. But like...
And...
If you look
so
at
let's do the first
leaders, one. Yeah, just to talk a little bit more about this, if you look at the preview leaders, like if you look at Qui-Gon and you look at Darth Maul, Darth Maul sets the minimum value with the Force token at 2 damage, right? Mm-hmm. And Qui-Gon can potentially be an enormous amount of value if you like are picking up a 6-drop and then you're replaying a 5-drop in particular that has a good ability. But
I would argue, Ned, that Darth Maul sets the minimum value at 0 damage.
Ooh.
And the reasoning is that Darth Maul is not phrased to give you a choice, meaning that if you try to do it early on, where you each have 1 unit, Darth Maul requires that you damage your own unit.
Well, I have played enough Death Trooper to be willing to damage my own units to damage my opponent's units.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, but that's not 2 damage, right? Like that is a net of
But
again, breaking
symmetry. Let's not get wrapped around the axle here. But
okay, that's fair. You just said minimum. So,
no, that's fair. That's fair. Minimum is 2. Minimum is 0. You're right.
I'm terrible at this game, so all I have left is pedantry.
Don't quote me on this. I think I saw one of the game designers on Blue Sky talking about how they were aiming to make the Force approximately equivalent to 1 resource, which again, time will tell whether that plays out, whether it's more like 1.5 or 1/2. Obviously, you can't do incremental resources, but
but you can.
Sure, fair. Like in Magic, for example, one of the, I don't know how many of your viewers do that, but like the idea of looking at the top of your deck and having the option to put it back there on the bottom, like the game designers talk about that being between, I think, 1/3 and 1/2 of a mana, which is like a resource here. So you can have like incremental resources and make it sort of build up, but
Well, so Ned and I talk a lot about the fact that like that gap it tends to be where you get to see essentially good cards versus bad cards. Is that you can only price cards in increments
at 2 or 3 or 4, right?
But they can have value. A 3.5 for 4 is bad. A 3.5 for 3 is good, right? So
absolutely.
So it'll be interesting to see, if nothing else, the fact that pricing it at a 1 resource or valuing it at 1 resource, if that, but not actually costing a resource, and so not costing you your curve, arguably makes it like only time will tell, right?
Time will tell how easy it is for you to get the Force token. It looks like it'll be easy, but of course we don't really know until we really play through the patterns.
Yeah.
I think it'll be very easy and limited.
Well, one will hope. One will hope.
Yeah.
As Ned and I talked, I think 2 episodes ago, it's possible that Fantasy Flight so far has not done a great job of sticking the landing on retention for their mechanics. So time will tell whether it's Coordinate or Spark of Rebellion, I guess. I think that's
as far as longevity.
Ned's high up on Hidden, but let's do our first card.
All right.
I can't believe you picked this, Ned. So Ned, what was your first pick? Curious Flock. Wow.
Okay, so
defend this card.
Absolutely. This is an XX for X, right? It is a 1/1 for 1. It is a 2/2 for 2. It is a 3/3 for 3. It is a 4/4 for 4. It is a 5/5 for 5. It is a 6/6 for 6, and it is a 7/7 for 7. So many games of Limited are decided by you having holes in your curve, or you drawing later in the game cards that are like your 2 resource cards, right? The beauty of Curious Flock is it's never a ultra high upside card. I am not jazzed about paying 2/2 for a 2/2 with no abilities, right? That feels bad. I'm not jazzed about like a 3/3 for 3 with no abilities. But a card that can be any of those at whatever point I need means that if I am an aggro deck, or a deck that is trying to be the beatdown, odds are high that I can make up whatever holes in my curve, and I can run this card as a theoretical top end for, okay, I don't want to draw my 7, even if it's a really good card, if I can't play it. I mean, depending on how good your 7 is, you do play your bombs in Limited, particularly in Sealed, but having a card that is flexible is insanely important. And I think that in a Limited context, you are going to see a lot more Curious Flocks than you might expect looking at it. And the fact that it's at common, I think is huge, is that it is for any deck that you are building. If you have a hole in your curve, you can fill it with a Curious Flock. You're not happy.
So you're looking for a Curious Flock at pre-release. You're hoping you have one.
I am jazzed if I get curious. Like, I'm not over the moon, but like when you're evaluating your pool to do your deck building, one of the fundamental things is, do I have cards up and down the curve? And Curious Flock being a neutral card that slots anywhere in your curve, it is spackle. It will spackle whatever holes you have, and that's important. It's not structurally supporting. Like I wouldn't build my deck out of spackle, but like you could do a lot worse.
Okay, I mean, fascinating.
Yeah.
I don't know that I heard a lot of analysis. Ben, I'm not going to put that on. Do you have anything to add?
No, I think the spackle analogy is actually pretty good. It's I talk a lot about on my channel about how important having a really good curve is. Your deck should be a lot of 2s and 3s, and then progressively less, and you have to divide that between the space and the ground arena depending on the format.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the time, even if you draft well or open well at pre-release or deck build well, you're probably going to have some non-ideal spots in your curve. Maybe you only have 1 3-cost space unit, or you only have 2 2-cost ground units. And through no fault of your own, it could happen. And yeah, I think cards like Curious Flock, you can just say, okay, like Ned was saying, like just having a 3-cost 3/3 is not really amazing. That's not really what you want. But the fact that you have the option for it to be that or something else, having an option is always so good. If you take 2 like bad cards and you stick them together, they become an okay card. If you take 2 okay cards and stick them together, they become a really good card. And this is like taking like, I'm not going to say it's like taking like 4 or 5 good or like bad cards and sticking them together, because it's not quite that good. But it gives you an option that's always good. Again, to draw from Magic a little bit, this card exists in Magic twice, actually. One of them is Ugin's Conjurant, and I don't remember what the other one is. And in Draft, in Magic, and again, Star Wars Unlimited is not Magic, but these cards have played okay in Magic's history. And that is sometimes an indicator that maybe there's something to be done here. Now, again, it's not a bomb, for sure. Don't first pick this.
No, completely agree.
But yeah.
It's a comment, right? Like,
yeah.
We're evaluating, and one of the reasons why I'm picking comments to do this analysis on is that Limited is built out of commons. Your Limited deck is going to be fundamentally commons with a smattering of uncommons, and then whatever rares you happen to support. And in particular, if you're playing Sealed, what rares you open is you have extremely limited control over. You have extremely limited control over what rares you have. So you fundamentally need to be able to identify what commons and uncommons are worth running.
Well, I mean, there's almost like 2 axes to your spackle analogy, Ned, in that there's both the ability just to fill up, but I also like that it gives you the outs, because you, as I even heard tonight watching you both play, there's regularly situations where there's the cards you want to play on your turn.
Yes.
And then there are the cards that make up the full curve.
Yes.
Right? You're sitting on 6 resources. Do you play the 4, which is what you really want to play, even though you have no 2s and no resource sinks? Or do you play the 2 3s that aren't as good but are the maximum,
resource
use
value.
of your resources?
Yeah.
And Curious Flock immediately is like, yeah, play that 4, or play whatever most of your hand that you want to play is, and fill it out. Not just from a standpoint of
the deck building standpoint, but also like the in-game, what am I playing on this particular turn? It being that flexible, I think, is quite strong. I mean, the only thing I will say is that it will be interesting if there's a lot of hosers for experience, because this is assuming
it is interesting that Magic doesn't treat its +1/+1 tokens as attachments.
No. Very rarely.
Or as upgrades or whatever they're called in Magic.
Enchantments.
I was actually about to comment about something like that, where it is interesting because there are cards in this set, and there's at least one, Kit Fisto's Aether Sprite, that when you play, you may defeat any number of upgrades on a unit. So it will be funny to turn your opponent's 6/6 Porg into a 1/1. That will be kind of fun.
But then you have cards that, I mean, hitherto unplayable, like Finn, where, being able to have like an infinite number of XP, not infinite, up to 6, but to have there aren't a lot of cards that ready access give you, that will just just give you 6 resources or 6 upgrades to play with, right? But there are cards where how do I get more than the 1 or 2 per turn? There's a bit of a struggle, and this card just being able to, that's not going to come up in Limited, so I don't know why I'm bringing it up, but.
I mean, it's worth mentioning. I mean,
it's an interesting to see that we have 5. You can get 6 actual upgrades, and so any card that cares about upgrades cares about this in a unique way. Do we want to do Ned's second card, or do we want to do Ben's first card?
I think let's go back and forth. Let's
sure.
All
right. So Ben's first card is one of the first, like other than the initial drop previews. Watto, no money, no parts, no deal. On attack, an opponent chooses one. You give an experience token to a friendly unit, or you draw a card. 3 for 1/6.
Yep, in Vigilance. And it's I'm glad you started with this one, because this sort of continues the theme of choices, right? The Porg, the Curious Flock, is, it gives you like this choice at any point in the game, and this gives you admittedly less of a choice. In fact, it doesn't give you really a choice. It gives your opponent a choice. And in the same way, card. Yeah, exactly. In the same way that you giving yourself a choice is very, very strong, giving your opponent a choice, a lot of the time, that is a lot worse than it looks. Like, because your opponent is always going to know or have a good idea of what the worst thing for you and the best thing for them is, right? Now, of course, you can mitigate that by having both of the options be pretty bad for your opponent. And this is kind of that. Both of these options are really good for you. As Parker said, it's either you draw a card, your opponent lets you draw a card, or they let you put an experience counter somewhere. And that can go on Watto if you have no other units, or even if you do have other units. So
I actually want to put it on Watto because it just prolongs the pain.
100%. Like, now, of course, you're opening yourself up to hard removal. You know what they say about eggs and baskets, but yes. I think usually you would prefer to draw the card, so for that reason your opponent will give you the experience. But you can usually make that work out really well for you anyway. Like a +1/+1, especially early in the game, which this is oftentimes going to be like a real breaker for you. Like if you and your opponent both have 2-3 ships and you swing in with Watto before they can attack back with it, like they have a real decision there, because if they choose experience counter, you have now just won whatever side space duel you have going on. And then if they choose card, that's also really good for you. Yeah.
So, you mentioned the hard removal, right? But it's interesting that this is with 6 HP and 3 cost, short of power of the dark side, or the one that I can never remember, Merciless Contest or whatever, where you each sack one. Like there isn't any removal, and limited. We haven't seen a ton of hard target removal in Legends of the Force yet.
Yeah, that'll. Sorry.
So one, we haven't seen a lot, but even again. It's just not there. I mean, if they're spending 5 or 6 to remove your 3 cost, like that's a
for sure
of itself, right?
Yeah.
So like, if this card didn't even have the option to draw a card, right? Like it's just an experience token every time. I think that's still reasonably playable, very playable, and limited. Where you're, because they're not going to be able to take this out in one, right? If you're dropping this on turn 2, nothing's swinging for 6, right? On turn 3, so he's sticking around for at least, or he's eating 2 attacks. Like the 6 butt on this is huge.
Absolutely.
And again, it can only get bigger by virtue of experience tokens.
100%.
But I also think it'll be interesting to see when Spark dropped. I Am Your Father was generally viewed. There were a couple outliers who have turned out to be very good players, but almost universally derided as not a good card from the argument of if you give your opponent a choice, it's not worth it. But it's actually, I think, you're seeing a non-trivial uptick in that card, in large part because it's not that hard to get to game states where drawing multiple cards or doing a bunch of damage are both good, right? Like in the same way that like Power of the Dark Side is valuable because it's more valuable than it looks on its face, and why it's so highly valued, because it's actually not that hard to get your opponent to a point where removing their worst card for 3, right? Just their leader, not that hard. Yeah. Like just one big, bomb, not that hard. Then you just get Power of the Dark Side. So I think like the choices, it turns out, it seems, because attacker chooses defender and so forth, it's not that hard in Star Wars Unlimited to create situations where both of the choices are good for you in a way that I think some other games it's a little bit hard.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that card because I actually forgot about it, and then my opponent sided in 3 of it in game 2 in the store showdown last week. I was like, oh, I forgot about that, and it was good. Yeah. It was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like, because there's a moment where you're like, well, I don't really want to lose this, but it's late game. Do I really want to? Because
it was against a control deck. I knew they weren't running Rival's Fall from game 1, and I had a Quinlan with 7 HP, and I was out of takedown range. I had other units for Power of the Dark Side. I was like, I'm pretty safe here, and then he whipped out I Am Your Father, and I was, okay, I forgot about that card. Like, fair enough.
I don't really want to give you 3 more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm very high on Watto.
Yeah, I agree.
I am. I'm immediately distrustful of single aspect units. As Ned knows, I've been against them since the beginning. I think they will continue. I mean, they're great and limited, right? Because they give you options. You don't have any other choice. But I'm always distrustful. But man, he's just going to start building.
And there's even when I initially looked at this card, I was a little bit nervous about the 1 attack. Because it's really not that good. But oftentimes it won't necessarily be 1 because it's on attack. So it's before the damage happens, they make the decision. So if you attack into a 2/2, let's say, they have to make the decision right there. It's like, because if you choose experience counter, that's going on Watto, you're losing your 2/2. Or you can give me a card, and I'm okay with that too. Like, both of those are, it's a 1/6, but it's scary. It's a secret hidden 2/7.
Yeah. I'm very high on this card.
I agree, for sure.
So,
yes.
Anything else to say about Watto before we move on to Ned's second card?
Only one tiny thing is he is not a force unit, and I don't think that'll be a huge issue. I think you'll be able to get enough force units other places, but again, we'll see if it's so mandatory that you have the force token at all points, then Watto might get a little worse, but I can't ever see a world where Watto's bad. The lack of force token, depending on how the format plays out, might be relevant.
Right, but that factors into draft and sealed. Yeah. I can't imagine.
No, probably not. Yeah,
if you're already in blue, are you so drunk on 3-cost ground units that you don't run a 6-button?
My guess is no. My guess is you're always running Watto if you can. But yes.
And I'm waiting to see what the removal available.
Yeah, that's
gonna be a big one. Yeah,
because so far we can remove 2-cost.
Yeah.
Right. Like
there's that, and then there's the use your 1. It's for a red. 3. Right. Remove your force token for 1 for 3. So that slightly better, but non-base targetable daring rate.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but we're not sitting in a world where we have. I mean, we went from Vanquish to Rivals Fall and Fell, all the way up to No Glory, right? Like every set up till now has had some just end it, and we haven't seen that yet. So.
Yeah, no,
it'll come.
But again, we're less than halfway into main deck rules. There'll be something. Ned's second card is Youngling Padawan, 2-cost 2/3, cunning, heroism, force, Jedi, and when played, the force is with you, or create a force token.
So I think that this is when we were talking about cards in formats and talking about the white room. This is a perfect card to talk about card analysis. Whether or not this card is good is going to depend on precisely 3 things. It is, number 1, how good is the force token? Number 2, how hard up are you for force units? Number 3, how good is a 2/3 for 2 on the ground? So in a world in which a 2/3 for 2 on the ground is not exciting. So one of the things that they've talked about that Tyler and folks have talked about is that, and the math is borne out, they are turning up the knob on 2-cost units and 3-cost units. So that 2-cost 2/4s are going to be a lot more common, and 3-cost 3/5s.
Or as previewed by us, a 3/4.
Yes, precisely. So Youngling Padawan is a card that trades very poorly into like RSA, right? Where you play your 2/3, you get your force token, and then they can attack with RSing and remove it. That feels really bad. You got your force token out of it, so you didn't get nothing, but you also didn't. And this is where like the contextual value matters a lot. How much, if your force token is worth a resource, let's say that it is worth a resource, that they hit their design goals, then a 2/3 with force for 2 that essentially like refunds you a resource is good. It's a 1-cost 2/3. But in a world in which you're not hitting that, or if you are not able in your limited deck to realize that value, then it is a 2/3 that occasionally has some trinket text. And so this is the kind of thing where evaluating cards outside of a format is really hard. And so I think that Youngling Padawan is either going to be a solid role player if having force units, being able to attack with force units from early turns, and being able to generate your force token without needing to attack are all important considerations, then I think it's a great unit. If none of those are true, then it is not a particularly good unit. Do you have a different take on things, Ben? Or
no, I think it's sort of something I can think of that's kind of similar, although this is even more extreme, is indirect damage in JTL. I remember during the preview season for that, it was very much like, okay, this does 3 indirect damage when it enters. What does that really mean? Like,
how good is it? Right.
Yeah, exactly. And you could speculate. It's like, because as we said earlier, okay, the force is with you is probably worth like 1 resource-ish. So, this buys you back for 1 kind of, sure, okay, so we can speculate. But we don't know until we see how the force plays out. Exactly the same idea.
And also, I think, one of the interesting questions in Limited is going to be, how many outs do you have to spend the force, right? Like, regardless of what the force is, if you're opening a sealed deck and, you don't really have any heroism leaders who are consuming the force, you don't have, a lot of cards in yellow that are consuming the force, then you're in a situation where it's like, yep, you can't bank it. You either have it, or it's either with you, or it's not. So then you're just sitting there like that context. Forget like the entire meta. Like, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
And if you don't have anything to do with it, then that value drops a lot. If you're hungry for force generation, right, where and this goes back to Ned, how valuable is a force unit? Like, everybody has access to the common bases, 28 HP. Attack with a force unit, generate the force. Like, great. Like, if you have a lot of consumers and not a lot of producers, and your primary producer is a base, you need those force units, and so the value on this goes up a lot because it's going to give it to you not once but maybe twice. And so, what are you going to do with the force?
Something that I do want to riff on a little bit is when you were mentioning indirect damage. Indirect damage, I think, is a really good example. Because not only do you have what is the value of 3 indirect damage, but those riders become hugely important. Like, I'd say Gorilla's the yellow 3 indirect damage 3/4. Like, that is a unit, or it's a 2/3. That is a unit for 3. Yeah, that is a unit that, if you look at it, does not look very impressive, but it has definitely overperformed in Limited in a lot of contexts, and it even sees constructed play because of that rider text, right? And so those little bits of context can make pretty huge changes. And so Youngling Padawan being both a force unit and making the force token when it comes in might be hugely valuable, or it could also be too much. Like, you're double dipping on something that you only need. You'd rather have that 1/5 Wookiee in green.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, moving on. I believe Ben's second is the just absolute bomb of Depa Billaba, a higher purpose. She is a 6-cost 5/7 in Cunning Yellow Heroism, Force Jedi Republic with Ambush and Saboteur. Also, new artist for Legends of the Force, Molly Vasan Sarakul. We haven't seen that artist before, so that's always exciting to me.
Yeah,
and I mean, like, the art on this, if you're not on YouTube,
it's good.
If you're listening, listening to us, you are like all the swoops. So like, you've seen the card so far, but man, just the coloring, the line work. I adore the art on this card. I have no idea who Depa Billaba is.
And if you're listening and you haven't seen the card, don't look it up while you're driving, but wait until you get to where you're going and then look it up. Okay.
Pull over at the side of the road, look up the card on SwooDB.
Yeah.
And
this is one of the cards that I am like absolutely all in on hyperspace, and I hope the artist got some of the prestige cards, because I'd love to see some of these. I bet. I just looking at the quality of this art, I have to imagine some of these are prestige cards. So.
I hope so.
I will
Anyways,
say it's interesting that there's a lot of purple shading on a yellow card, where normally they try and mirror the like primary colors in the card art, but this
I hate that.
yeah.
I'm sure there's game playable reasons why, like,
Yes.
oh, you want yellow cards to look yellow so people know
Yeah.
they're yellow. That's dumb. Like, there are cunning people who only wear green and red, Ned. They just dress like Christmas, and it's cunning. Anyways, sorry.
So I almost feel bad for picking this card just because it's so obviously good. There's not really like a lot of hidden analysis. Like if you've done any draft or sealed or anything, you know that ambush is incredible. It's the strongest keyword in limited, in my opinion, and most people's opinion. Pairing it with saboteur it has use cases. It's good. It's good. The 5/7 stat line pretty much means you're always going to get a 2-for-1 with it. And again, this is so. In my opinion, the saboteur is relevant because of the stat line. So oftentimes your opponent is going to have, not oftentimes, sometimes your opponent's going to have some sentinel blocking an important unit. Maybe it's their last force unit for generation of force tokens. Maybe it's some unit with a keyword like restore that gets incremental value over time. If they've built their deck right and they're playing well, they have something like that behind a sentinel. And this just completely just deletes that. And then also... is almost certainly going to stick behind, right? Because there's no chance of it. Well, I guess there is, but it's a low chance that it's going to have 7 power. Right. And of course, typically if you're paying 6 for a unit, you do want it to like, maybe 2-for-1 isn't the right word, but you want it to have like a pretty good amount of value. So you do expect it to be good, but I think for the reasons described, this just has so much flexibility. This card is going to be a head above the other 6-cost common and uncommons. And we know ambush is good. There's not really any hidden secrets there.
I mean, I'm pretty pro, just because like there's actually a fair amount of common sentinel and shielded bombs. Like Lothwolf is a common. You're gonna see and like that's the 2 for 3/3 sentinel that just can't attack. You're going to see people using that to make you angry. I think Sorsu stance, you're going to see, it's uncommon. You're going to see enough of that, because that's just putting that expands. That's the play force unit and give it a shield. That you're going to see an absolute non-trivial amount with that. You're going to see Jedi Sentinels, which are the 5/4 conditional Sentinel. You're going to see Darth Tyrannus, right? Like less so in limited, but I mean, there's enough in the format. There are enough shield or Sentinel and shield units that I think that saboteur is non-trivial. You've got a number of common leaders who are going to be who come out shielded. Both Grand Inquisitor and Kanan Jarrus come out shielded. And being able to answer that free leader flip. She won't completely answer Kanan with a 6 health, but yeah, I think the saboteur is slightly more valued or has a high likelihood of being slightly more valued.
I didn't realize how pervasive shield tokens were yet. When I look at all the cards when they're all revealed, I'll do more.
Saboteur, I think. I mean, again, from a limited standpoint, right? Like, I don't know how valuable Saboteur ends up being in a lot of constructed formats, but it looks like
if there's shield tokens everywhere as part of the value of the cards that your opponents are playing, then just like completely getting rid of that, 25% of the value of the card is just, of course, that's incredible. Yeah.
Just one more note on this card, and that is the idea of getting, again, when we're talking about like the value of the force token, if you're running the common base, being able to simultaneously remove a threat and make your force token from hand can have a lot of value, because the base triggers on attack, and so an ambush is an attack, and so being able to generate that force token when you play the card, along with eliminating one of your opponent's units, probably, I think can lead to saving a lot of games where you're on the knife edge. Like how often has it been that you are one action short of being able to stabilize or get across the finish line.
Well, there's absolutely, while the format is new, going to be someone who is staring down an empty board and an opponent with no force token who assumes that, well, they won't be able to use the force this turn because they're not going to, you know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, people will quickly remember that Depa Billaba
Yeah.
exists, but like somebody's going to make that misplay on pre-release weekend of like, nope, you got the force out of hand.
Yeah.
So. Going once, going twice. Ned, your last card you want to talk about was Nightsister Warrior, the Vigilance 2/2 for 2, who is a Force Knight. When defeated, draw a card.
So I mostly want to talk about this in the context of not being able to bring analysis from other games over. So I think that one of the challenges about this card, if you're approaching it from a context of somebody who is not in like a SWU environment, is the stat line is bad, but it does draw you a card, so you have this idea that it will at least replace itself. But because in SWU you're drawing 2, and because the 2/2 on the ground stat line I think is so bad, I did like a quick search for the number of units that it can answer in a limited context, and you're almost never seeing this. I think that this is going to end up a lot more like the V-Wing that you saw in Spark, that was a 1/1 for 2 in space that drew a card. And that is the kind of card that is superficially appealing, particularly if you're trying to run a more controlling style of deck where you're under this idea that I need to play to the board early. By playing this unit, I am materially impacting the board, but I'm also being able to maintain my hand and hopefully draw into whatever cards I'm going to use to take over the game. Because that's what a control deck means in a limited context, is I feel like I have card or cards that are so valuable in the end game that the plays up until that point kind of don't matter. And so I think that this card is very likely to be a trap. And we will see how things develop. But again, just looking at that 2/2 for 2 with a draw a card text, it is simultaneously very appealing, but also very likely to be the kind of thing that you don't want to be doing in limited, which is spinning your wheels. You always want to be making sure that you are affecting the board in one way or another, and I think the stat line on this is just not quite good enough to be able to affect the board. Of course, I will happily eat my words if it turns out that this stat line does like play well enough on the ground that you are able to threaten or materially create value from the body of this card. But I think that it's very easy to overvalue draw a card in the SWU context.
It does have the force keyword, and that might, being a 2-cost force unit, and that might be your option.
Right. You're not wrong.
I want to make a tangent, Ben, but I want you to have the opportunity to talk about Nightsister Warrior. She is a simple card. There may not be much to say. Do you have something to say about Nightsister Warrior?
About what, sorry?
Nightsister Warrior.
So I mostly agree with what Ned was saying. To talk again about what was it? The V-Wing in Spark, the one that draws your card. Yeah. It does make me sad, kind of, to agree with you here, because again, I'll bring up Magic. Helpful Hunter is one of my favorite draft cards in Magic of all time. It's 2 mana, 1/1. When it enters, draw a card. I would play 4 copies of that in any Magic deck where I could get my hands on.
Elvish Visionary. 2-cost 1/1 draw card.
Yeah, there's so many, and they're fantastic, but I agree that just drawing 2 cards a turn does mean that drawing 1 card is a little bit less valuable. And then also, once again, Magic is not Star Wars. There are lots of other differences. It just turns out, and then of course, when defeated, in this particular card's case, when defeated is certainly a lot worse than when it enters. If this card said, when it enters, draw a card, it would definitely be better than it is now, for sure. So as it stands, I think I agree. I would have to look again at all the 2-drop stat lines. If there's a lot of like 3/2s, maybe it gets a bit better. But I
saw basically no 3/2s.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of 4/1s with like hidden or ambush.
Sure. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Things are more survivable now.
But again, part of this, and I know this is like boring because we've said it like 10 times, but how relevant is the force token? How relevant is the force tag? But yes, I think that oftentimes the line will be, if you have initiative, you play this, your opponent plays something, initiative pass, they kill it on their first action. If the force token is going to be relevant, or I guess you can attack in and then they just kill it back. Sure, they get their force token, but now they're up a unit, you take a card, but then, you're just like very behind. And then if you don't have the initiative when you play this on turn 1, it's just really bad. So I think that, again, probably not super high on this. It is still a 2 cost, which definitely puts a floor. Like there's only so bad that a 2 cost can be. They're always fine, at least. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You're always sad when you don't have one.
Yeah.
I do want to Ned's point about bringing other evaluation rules to Star Wars Unlimited. I do just want to acknowledge, and we don't have an episode coming up, I think, where like this will be timely. The rise of Data Vault. Hard right on the. But like everybody, the rule is always run the minimum number of cards you can. We've had people write in to ask Ned, is there a weird corner case where running the Emperor, like it makes sense in a certain meta? And there is. But like the strong universal rule is run the minimum number of cards you can. And it turns out watering your deck by 20% for 3 HP is not just viable, it's strong.
Yeah.
And I think that is so counter to like
that shocked me.
The common knowledge, like accepted value.
When that card was spoiled, I was laughing in group chats with people at it. I was like, this is ridiculous. Why is anyone like Thermal Oscillator? I was like, that's a good card. I'm playing that card. But Data Vault, shot. But Data Vault is Kira Data Vault is like a tier 1 deck right now.
Yeah. So I read an article about the porgosity coefficient, where somebody was attempting to like mathematize the idea that Data Vault is not as harmful as you think it is.
Was it the Porg Depot?
Yes, that was the Porg Depot. Yes. Where they were mathematizing the idea that Data Vault isn't as harmful as you think it is, and I think it comes down to and their argument is basically the reason why it's not as harmful as you think it is. And I know that we're going deep into a tangent on an already long episode, but because you are adding essentially multiple cards that cover the bases of the card. So there are multiple cards that fulfill more or less the same role. So you are not watering your deck down as much as you would expect, because there are multiple cards at a particular cost that cover a particular role. And so you can just strategically inflate the number of cards. And I think that is true as long as there is a relatively small delta between the best card in a cost to do a job and the next best card.
Sure. And we can talk about that math another time, Ned. I was just fascinated by like the rule from so many games, people coming in as never go above your minimum, and yet.
I guess the answer to the question, what if Yorion was healing salve, is it's good enough somehow.
All right, and our final card, we've already mentioned once on the show, is Chirrut Imwe, Blind But Not Deaf. That's the new unit, Chirrut. He is a 4/3/5 Force Fringe Sentinel. When this unit is attacked, you may use the Force. If you do, the attacker gets -2/-0 for this attack.
So I chose this unit not because it's like exceptionally strong. I think it's pretty good. But I think I chose this unit, for 2 reasons. One, I love Chirrut. He's awesome. But 2, I think he's going to be really, really annoying. Because you don't have to choose to use your Force token until you know that attack is going to be relevant for whatever your game plan is. It's easy to imagine a version of this effect where, it's just the first time each turn, for example, they get -2/-0. Right. But this is not that. You get to choose at the moment of damage being dealt or right before whether you want it to be reduced. And that's going to, again, it's going back to having a choice. This doesn't look like having a choice like the other cards do, but this is having a choice. And it'll oftentimes really slow down the ground. So I would definitely consider running Chirrut in any deck where I want it to go a little bit later. Because it's going to be really annoying and it's going to slow your opponent down, especially if this is a ground heavy set, which it seems like it probably will be.
Mechanically, I think it's really interesting. Up until now, they've kind of hesitated to do a lot of effects that require you to make decisions in response to your opponent's choices.
Yes.
And so I think where the traditional flow has been, when it is your action, then you are making the choices. When it is somebody else's action, and I Am Your Father was one of the cards that kind of broke that, but that's a Punisher effect. But I think that it is interesting that this is a card that is kind of forcing you to make a choice in the middle of another sequence, and I like that they're exploring that territory mechanically. It's definitely an advantage of like a table game. Is it in an automated rules enforcement engine kind of a context? That's a lot of like choice passing back and forward, where each step is costing. But when you're playing on the table with other human beings, just like I attack your guy, I use Chirrut, it takes 2 seconds. It's fine.
Yeah.
Well, you say that, but also, and you're not wrong about the digital versus paper. But I also think there's something to be said for the fact that I remember exactly when I got off the Hearthstone train, and not to get into Hearthstone for people who don't.
I remember too.
But like it was when we were getting previews for cards, and I was realizing there was no desire to expand the complexity of the game. Like they wanted to keep it remains simple, and I think we've all read Mark Rosewater articles. There is a strong need to always have a like accessible on ramp to the game for people who are new, to be able to say you don't want to like let the game just be like, well, if you haven't been here from the beginning, there's no way you're going to keep up. Which, I mean, you can do that. That's called Commander, but like there's no. Like you want to have that on ramp, but at the same time, it's some of it is just how much complexity you put in a set. But I think being able to say, like, yep, we're going to explore this space, the decision making on defense, because Chirrut won't be the only spend the force. Mark my words. Like I'll make this wager. Chirrut is not the only. You may spend the force when attacked, or when your opponent does X, you may spend the force to do Y, and like having opponent does thing trigger, I think I'm so pumped for that, just because it's a willingness to, just a little bit of complexity in the game. So I'm sorry, I'm not analyzing from a limited standpoint. That's all you do. I'm just like, I'm just sassing.
Yeah. I think that the 3/5 stat line for 4, like it's I'm not excited about it, but it's also like technically potentially a 3/7 for 4.
Yeah.
Or
more. Yeah.
Right. So like evaluating it in that context, I think is very interesting. Obviously, if you're not generating the force, this card starts looking a lot worse. But that goes back to that context about like how easy is it to make the force. Chirrut has force, so and he can attack, so you can make your force theoretically. But if it is an environment in which board states tend to be clear more often than not, and therefore your ability to attack with a unit to generate the force is restricted, then I think that the value of this card goes down if it's like a highly lethal environment.
One thing that I think is going to be really annoying with Chirrut is if you already have the force when you play him and it gets through, so he's readied. Just like being able to say your opponent attacks Chirrut, you say I use the force token, and then on your action you just attack with Chirrut, you get the force token back, and then you can do it again. And depending on the board state, that might not always be important, but sometimes that will really put your opponent in molasses. Like they will just not be able to get through.
I guarantee if you run Chirrut, that will happen once during your pre-release night.
I'm going to be trying my hardest to force Chirrut in respect to the Spark the Rebellion leader. So
one out of 6 matches. I like those odds. I feel good about those.
I hope so.
The counterpoint to that is in the reverse case where you have the initiative and you just have Chirrut on board and you already have your force token. Are you really going to pass to get maximum value? Like that decision-making point, I think, is going to be difficult because if you're attacking with
something,
hopefully you have something else to play. Hopefully.
You have 5 resources. So, before we wrap up, I have to ask Ned, how are you going to cost the Porg group?
The Porg group is going to be costed
Is it 7 different cards?
Yeah, no,
Is it a
I
1/1
can't
and
do
a
that.
2/2?
I can't do that.
Well, what if you included every other card 7 times, Ned?
I mean, I guess I could. God, that's gonna blow the hell out of. I don't like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't considered how I was gonna. Boy,
I assumed
think
you
I'm
hadn't,
gonna
which
take,
is why I asked, because then we
Yeah.
can get your reaction live
I'm
on
gonna.
air.
I'm probably gonna take the median value. I'm gonna see like how often this gets played, because Ned Math is primarily done in like a premier context rather than in a limited context. And
Sure.
so I think valuing this as like a 4/4 for 4, I feel like that's probably the stat line that I'm most excited about, because like a 3/3 for 3 feels not quite good enough, and a 2/2 for 2 is definitely not good enough. A 5/5 for 5, eh.
I don't care, Ned. And I don't know if anybody else cares. I mostly wanted to watch your reaction to thinking about that. Ben, thank you for joining us. We are well over an hour.
Good.
As always, if you, dear listener, Ben is on Unlimited Limited, and a strong recommendation.
Yes.
And
Thank you.
were telling us before recording, forthcoming huge video on Legends of the Force once we've seen it all.
Yeah.
And I need videos. I watch content creators mostly for fun, but only Survive My pre-release is like the primary place I go for actual substantive content. So I'm very excited for that video. Link in the comments, blah, 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 blah. We don't care. Ben might care and be like, no, say more. But Ned, dear listener, if you have any final thoughts, Ned checks theforceunlimited@gmail.com. Ned, do you have any final thoughts?
I do have a final thought, and that final thought is the creature Jedi combo as like the two traits that they're really exploring, I thought was interesting. Because I think that the creatures of the Star Wars universe are something that has a lot of appeal. And this feels like a great set to put them in.
Creatures are the specters of Legends of the Force. You heard it here first.
Bam.
There's going to be a couple super fans who won't get it off the ground, and otherwise it's a non-keyword.
Yeah.
That's my take. At Ned in the comments if you disagree. Ben, do you have any final thoughts about the episode?
I'm really looking forward to Legends of the Force. Again, as someone who's been playing a Force deck for basically since launch, I'm really looking forward to the set. I'm following the spoilers sort of softly. I'm going to really dive into it whenever they all come out. It was really fun to come on here and talk about the cards, and I'm sure we'll be in touch for future.
Absolutely. Congratulations on becoming a friend of the show.
Good stuff.
Everybody up. How do you feel about basically guaranteed force throw?
That was carrying the Chirrut deck, completely being carried by force throw. I'm worried that it's going to get banned. I hope it doesn't, but we'll see what happens. I like it a lot, but I know that other people might not like it as much because they're not playing the Chirrut or Quinlan deck.
A lot of people are going to be having, force throw is going to be everywhere.
Yes.
That's it, dear listener. We are getting way too long. We're just having too much fun talking with Ben. Have a wonderful night. Ned and I, and not Ben, will see you in a few weeks.
Adios.
Have a good night.